Hello and welcome to this Let's Count lesson all about the census, where we're going to find out what the census is. My name is Alison Hopper and I'm really excited to be able to share with you some information about the census and some information from the census to think about why we do it and why it is so important. So have you heard of the census? Do you know what the census is? Well, we're going to learn about this. So if you would like to find out about it for yourself, now would be a good time to pause this recording, because on the next slide I'm going to tell you what the census is all about. Okay, so what is the census? Well, the census is a count of all the people and all the households in England and Wales. So every house gets a census questionnaire to fill in, asking lots of questions to gather important information about who lives in England and Wales. The last census was held on the 27th of March in 2011, and the next one will be in March 2021. So the census is held every 10 years. It takes a lot of organisation, so we don't do it more often than that. And it has happened every 10 years since 1801, so that's over 200 years. It didn't happen in 1941, as that was in the middle of the Second World War and it wasn't possible to organise. So there is a lot of information about how England and Wales have changed over the last 200 years. If we go further back in history, lots of people in the past have found ways of finding out who lives in their country, sometimes so they can collect money from them in the form of taxes, and to find out what they need to keep their country happy and healthy. And that's a lot about what the census is about now. So as we have said, it is a count of all the people in England and Wales. And it's a really special thing because it asks lots of questions, but it asks them to everybody on the same day. Then people at the Office for National Statistics who organise the census look at the answers that people give and make them into charts and graphs, and then they share that information around the country. So what sort of questions does the census ask? It asks people where they live, what sort of jobs they do, which languages they speak, and even things like how many cars they own. It also asks them about their health and whether they are happy in what they are doing. What happens to all these answers? Well, as we said, the people at the Office for National Statistics turn them into information which is shared with the government in the capital cities and with the local governments in areas all around Wales and England. This helps people in local government to make sure that their area has everything that it needs. It helps us by making sure that there are enough schools and hospitals and that they are in the places where people need them. I hope you can see that it's really important that everyone fills in the census questionnaire to make sure that we have what we need to keep us happy and healthy. So in March 2021, I hope you will encourage the adults that you live with to fill in the questionnaire and maybe even have a look at some of the questions yourself. Another interesting thing about the census is that because it's been happening for over 200 years, there's lots of information that can help us to find out about life in the past. And lots of people use the census information from right back in the early 1800s to find out about their own families in the past and to find out about their local area. Census records can really help us to build a picture of life in the past. Well, I think it's about time we looked at some data from the census, don't you? Here is some data from the 2011 census, and this data is all about how many children of different ages lived in this one small part of the country in March 2011, on that particular day when the census was recorded. I wonder if you were on this census. If you are 10 now, then yes, you probably were in the 0 to 4 age group when the 2011 census was recorded. If you're 9 or under, then you may not have been born at the time of the last census. The next census in March 2021 will be the first one where you appear. That's quite exciting to think about, isn't it? So when the questionnaire comes to your house, you'll be able to see yourself added to the information for the first time. I think we need to look at this information more closely. What do you notice? What does this information tell us? You can see that we have grouped the ages of the children. What do you notice about the way the ages have been grouped? Now would be a good time to pause this recording and have a look at the information. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at this data and this information for yourself. What did you notice about the way the ages have been grouped? I hope you noticed that they're not all the same size. We've got two bigger age groups, 0 to 4 years and 10 to 14 years. And they're bigger than the 5 to 7 years age group and the 8 and 9 years, which is just children aged 8 or 9. That might explain why some of the numbers of those children are bigger than others, because we're looking at a larger group of children. It's always important to look at how the information has been organised and what it is telling us. Well, that was interesting, but now let's look at that information alongside the same age groups recorded in the 2001 census from 10 years before. Have a look at the numbers. Which age groups have got more children in them and which have got fewer children in them? I wonder if we can work out which age group has had the biggest change in those 10 years. It's time to pause the recording again and have a closer look. Which numbers have changed and which numbers have had the biggest change? I hope you've had a good look at that information. None of those figures have stayed the same, have they? Some of them have stayed closer to being the same than others. Some of them have increased and got bigger, and some have decreased and got smaller. I hope you noticed that there are more children aged 0 to 4 in 2011 than there were in 2001. For children aged 5 to 7 and 8 and 9, those numbers have fallen a little bit. But where's the biggest change? Well, the biggest change is in the children aged 10 to 14 years. We've got a lot more of them. I wonder what you think will happen in the next census in March 2021 to those numbers. Could you make some predictions about what the numbers might be when the next census happens in March 2021? What numbers do you think will go in the boxes in the final column of the table? Have a think and fill it in for yourselves. We've been looking at the information in tables, and here is that same information presented as a bar chart. It is the same numbers with the children from 2001 in the blue columns and the children from 2011 in the orange columns. The age ranges are the same. Is it easier to see how the numbers have changed in the table or in the bar chart? Do the changes look bigger or smaller? The bars don't look so different in height, do they? But they have all changed, and it's very clear which have increased and which have decreased. You can see that for 0 to 4 and 10 to 14, the orange bars are taller than the blue bars, showing that the numbers have increased, and that for 5 to 7 and 8 to 9, the orange bars are shorter than the blue bars, showing that the numbers have decreased slightly. I wonder if you prefer the information in the table or in the bar chart. I think I prefer the bar chart. It's the same information, but I can see really quickly which age ranges have increased and decreased. We talked about whether you have been included in the census count before, and that for lots of you, this census in 2021 will be the first time that you are included in the count. You will appear in a particular age range. Can you find the age range where you will be recorded in the next census? How old will you be in March 2021? I want to focus on the children who were aged 0 to 4 in 2001. It's quite a long time ago now, but in 2001 there were 370 children in this part of the country who were aged 0 to 4. When the next census happened 10 years later, in 2011, how old were those children? If you were 0, so had just been born in 2001, how old would you be in 2011? If you were 4 years old in 2001, how old would you be 10 years later in 2011? Have a think about it and work out where those 370 children will appear in the 2011 census. I hope you worked out that the children who were 0 to 4 in the 2001 census were 10 to 14 in the 2011 census. And look at how that number has changed. It's gone from 370 0 to 4-year-olds in 2001 to 401 10 to 14-year-olds in 2011. Can it just be the same children? It can't be, can it? Now is a good time to pause the recording and have a think about what you notice and how that number can have increased. What do you think might have happened in the years between 2001 and 2011? Here is the same information presented as a bar chart. This time the blue bar is the children who were 0 to 4 in 2001 and the orange bar is the children who were 10 to 14 in 2011, which you would think would be the same children if they all stayed living in the same place. We can see that there are more children. So over the 10 years between 2001 and 2011, families with children in that age group must have moved into this area of the country. One of the important things that the census does is to tell us how our areas are changing and how the population, the people who live there, is changing, and how what we have in our area may need to change because of the different people who live there, our changing population. We've got more children now in this area who are 10 to 14 than there were before. What do we know about children in this age group? What do children aged 10 to 14 like to do? You may have friends, brothers, sisters, cousins who are 10 to 14. Children in this age group are leaving primary school and starting at secondary school. You might be about to be part of this age group, or you will be soon. They will soon be teenagers. They might be into sports, dance. They might be members of clubs or scouts and guides. If the numbers of these children are growing, do we need to do something about it? Do we need to provide more of these activities? What can this information help us to do? As we said earlier in the lesson, the census information helps to make sure that we have all the things we need where we live to keep us happy and healthy. It may be that we need more schools if we have more children, or more leisure facilities, sports centres, cinemas perhaps, so that they have things to do when they're not at school. It may be that we need more parks and safe open spaces for children to play and exercise in. This information can help planners and people in charge of our local areas to think about how the area needs to change as the population, the people who live there, and what they need changes. What would you suggest? What do you think this area of the country needs to keep these families happy? Now is the time to do something with this information. We've used the census information to find out how the population in this little part of the country is changing. So what do we need to do about it? Here are some ideas of things you might want to do. You could design a poster to show what you think this area needs to keep this growing number of children happy. You could write a letter to the local council and the planners explaining what you have found out from the information and why you think a new park or maybe a new sports centre is needed in this area. You might want to make a leaflet to show why this is already a good area for families and children. Your leaflet might encourage more families to move to this area. Whatever you decide to do, think about your audience. Who's going to be reading and looking at what you produce? Make sure that the information you include and the way that you write and present it is right for them. What do you want them to think after reading your poster, your letter or your leaflet? Will it persuade somebody that your idea is a good one? Will it encourage people to come to this area because of the things they will find? Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit more about the census, finding out what it does and why it is so important. I hope that you'll look out for it in March 2021 when the questionnaire arrives where you live, and that you'll talk to the adults that you live with about how important it is to fill it in. And perhaps this will be the first census where you appear in the count. Thank you for taking part in this lesson.